The Legend of Ahya series is coming back with Book 4. Are you excited? If so, stick around for the in-depth interview with the author himself. Are you ready? Let's go! Hey there, I'm Kame the Turtle, and you are watching Turtle Time. And I recently found out that the Legend of Ahya series is going to be dropping Book 4 later this year. So I managed to snag an interview with the author. Joining us once again is the author of the Legend of Ahya series. It is Darkflame Wolf, Matthew Colvath.
Hey everybody, it's nice to be back with another book, another year, another book. How are you doing today, Kame?
Oh, can't really complain. How about yourself?
Working hard on getting this book out the door finally, and also continuing to write book 5.
I know the Discord server for the Legend of Ahya series has grown exponentially since we last did this.
I was surprised myself at the growth of the community since book 3. It's definitely been a fun thing to watch myself as the author, so I always have fun interacting with fans.
And today we're going to be talking about some questions about the book, the lore of the world, and everything in between, from personal questions of myself to questions asked by the community. So this one actually comes from the community itself. What is the name of the world this story takes place in?
Well, it's actually something that has been eluding everybody, including myself, for the longest time. Primarily because I've never had a need to name. It's only actually named since I started writing book 5. It's not going to be revealed in book 4, so don't expect it here when you read the book. But at the beginning of book 5, I had a reason. I had a reason to name it, and the name of this world is Hern. It means, the English word is a mythical hunter. And if you remove the extra R, I think it's pronounced Herrne, but if you remove the extra R, it becomes mythical hunter god. So there's some additional meanings behind the name of the world. But as for why, well, that comes into play after book 4.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to find out more, and why the name Hern fits so well. Question number 2. Throughout the book series, you have introduced power mammals, reptiles, and birds. Where did you get your inspiration for their powers from?
Well, from a variety of sources. Obviously, there were some that were pulled from things like X-Men, some that were pulled from Heroes, the television show, some were pulled from even anime, like Trigun, Legend of Ahya. They come from all sorts of various inspirations and stuff, and I usually take them. I don't usually do a one-for-one swap. I try to add a little something extra to those powers so they become somewhat different than their original inspirations. And so every time I come up with a new powered mammal, bird, or reptile, I try and think about how best would this serve the current scene and overall story, and would it fit with what I am trying to do. So there's always the running the risk of making a character too powerful, or making a character not useful enough with the powers that were given to him. So I always have to figure out what's the best power to give to any particular mammal.
I can see where that would be a balancing act.
Very much so, yes.
Because if you just give someone the power to give a flexible ton, but they already had a flexible ton anyway.
And if one becomes too overpowered, I have to know right out of the gate how the power can be beaten. Like, everybody by now should know Rakkus and how overpowered he can be, but I've already figured out well in advance how he can be defeated. And if you can figure that out, then giving someone an extremely overbearing power doesn't become an issue anymore, because you know when and where he or she is going to be defeated.
That's a good tip for anyone writing superpowers. If you're writing superpower stories and you have to give your opponent overpowered power, you gotta figure out how to defeat them. But at least give your heroes a struggle to get to that point. And don't give the overpowered power to the heroes, because we don't need another Superman clone.
Absolutely not. And that is what I've been trying to avoid as much as I can with Taylor, while still making sure she is the most unique person in this world.
Now, throughout the last couple books, Book 2, As Above and So Below, as well as Book 3, Figures of Prophecy, we were introduced to several new characters who all had powers, or at least a simile of power, including Taylor's romance partner, as well as 2 new characters introduced in Book 3. Where did the powers for Taylor's romantic partner and the 2 new characters introduced in Book 3 come from?
Her romantic partner, which I believe you're referring to, is Liam McCall. He looks like he seems to have several, which seems to break certain rules that have been laid down in the book series so far, but there's reasons for that. But of course, the most primary one is super strength, and he can Hulk out and go big. That's kind of the biggest thing he can do. And as for the 2 new characters, I think one of them you're probably talking about is Marley Tallbender. She was actually one of the first batch of kids who were pulsed by the Arbiter with this little DNA ray there. And it's a blink and you miss it cameo in Book 2. It's during the Sting chapter where Marana is found by her then husband Anthony. One of the children in there is Marley. So the one with the little plushie and the giraffe. So a little blink and you miss it, and she's there. And
right.
then who's the third person, the second person you're talking about?
I completely forgot about Marley.
So she wasn't one of the ones.
No, I was counting the 2 young ones.
Ah, yes, Akinar and Moira. Well, counterpoint, they're actually part of the new batch, the second batch, pulsed by the Arbiter. So we got a legacy batch, and we got a new current batch of pulsed animals, birds, mammals, and possibly reptiles. They were actually kind of decided on the spot, I won't lie. I was trying to figure out powers for each of them because I knew I wanted several new characters to appear in Book 3 to provide the impetus for the journey and the objective that Stephen and Max were going to go on to entreat the Avians for help. And I needed some new characters for that. And so for Moira, I always loved the idea of Gambit as an X-Men character, and how about I could translate that skill set to a pangolin. And since pangolins can regrow out over the course of weeks and stuff, scales, she could just rip off some of her scales, charge them, and they become projectile explosives. So it seemed like a perfect fit for her. It was Akinar that was the more difficult of the 2 to figure out a power for. And so I decided to do sort of like a stop mechanic, but not really. It was more like slowing down, but within a field of effect, like a bubble. And he could manipulate things within that bubble to operate in real time or slower time, while everything around the bubble is still going in real time. So it was a little bit of a tricky power to try and figure out and how I could best use that.
Right.
But so they were definitely some fun characters to figure out. And you get to see more of them in Book 4.
Excellent. As these are 2 of the youngest characters canonically introduced in the series that are active with the rest of the team members, does that give you any issues?
I'm not exactly sure what issues we're talking about, but no, actually it did not. I always knew that they would be some sort of adult caretakers for them. Not necessarily Stephen or Max, although they are adults in this case, but more so Mikhail. I would believe that he provided the perfect leader, if you say, of the group that would guide these 2 young characters into the journey that they'll be taking. I always treated them not necessarily as children because they were basically in their teens. They should be fully fleshed out characters and they should be treated as such. So I didn't really give them any sort of downgraded handicap for thinking that they're going to be younger than they should be. I know that some people have trouble writing younger characters, writing children, but they're not children at all. They're teenagers. And so they are very, very well aware of the actions that they do. And so treating them like that, it was just natural how they fit into the group.
I agree with how you've written them.
Yeah, it's like Jubilee from X-Men. I keep referring to X-Men, but that's big inspiration. Jubilee is a teenager. I think she was like 15, 16, around the age of Akinar, actually, that when she joined the X-Men. And yeah, she's bubbly, she does stupid things, and she has, her usual teenage interests and everything, but at the end of the day, she's still an effective member of the team. She can still pull her weight, she can still make decisions, both good or bad, for the people around her, and you just treat her as a person, and you write her as such. So that's how I approached Moira and Akinar. Even though Moira is on the preteen side, I still approach them like actual characters who could make decisions that would impact others around them.
I know you introduced a key figure of the script church in Book 3. who turns out to be one of the character's relatives of sorts. What was your inspiration for him?
You mean Archbishop Calbender?
Yep.
It was, at the moment, trying to figure out her backstory, a little bit off the cuff in terms of their relationship. I didn't really originally plan to have someone in the church to be her father until I got to a point where it was the council meeting in chapter 11 in book 3, where the birds were meeting with the church and the high council and everything, that one of the bishops there was a giraffe. And that was at that point where I thought to myself, this would be fantastic, dramatic tension and conflict between the protagonists and in this case, the antagonists within the church, to have one of them be related to one of the very people they just met, which would be Marley.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say that's been one of my favorite decisions to have made. Like, everybody hates him, and rightfully so, as a character for what he's done to her. But he provides a unique viewpoint into the church, into the psyche of the church and how they view script and how they treat it. Even when it's fallible because of prophecy, they will still zealously cling to the script. And so providing that sort of viewpoint helps flesh out the church as a fully grown entity that exists in this world.
Fascinating. And on the other side of the world, in the country of Takar, the country of the reptiles, we're introduced to a sub-race called the Elder Species. Care to elaborate on them?
You mean the Anthro-dinos?
Yep.
Yes. One of the readers in book 3, one of the beta readers actually, immediately messaged me after I introduced them and said, how dare you drop Anthro-dinosaurs, don't explain, and then leave. It's a fantastic addition, and it simply made sense. We do not have amphibians. We have not seen anthropomorphic amphibians in this world of Hearn. But we have seen reptiles. We have seen lizards. And dinosaurs are just an offshoot of that bigger family. And so to me, that felt like a natural fit to add them in, but also to call them elder races. They've been here much longer than anything in any current species of lizard is living currently right now, and so they have a longer lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
I had fun the dichotomy between the current, more robust, technological, evolved current lizards, the present-day lizards, if you will, and their massive empire, to the elder races, which almost seem like they're a rebel sect, like they're on the run, and they're the underdogs in this case. Well, I really liked creating these tyrant lizards, these big, massive dinosaurs, as not the aggressors in this case, but more of the oppressed. And I really like that subversion of the expectation there with the elder races.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to learning more about these races in book 4.
And there will be some more time spent with them, because we just barely got a hint of their existence, and Taylor and Company will be spending a fair number of chapters among them in book 4.
Speaking of, I know book 3 was the first true cliffhanger. Was that done intentionally?
Yeah, no, because I don't really like to leave books off cliffhangers, especially with such a huge time frame in between books, in this case over a year between books 3 and 4, because I just feel that's not fair to the reader. But I couldn't really split books 3 and 4 perfectly to where I could start book 4 at a nice spot, because if I kept extending book 3 to a certain point, we would be midway through the events, the plot arcs, and everything of book 4, and there was no good place to stop in the middle of them. So after the big escape from Taukar and things like that, and after finding Moira and on the hunt for Marley and everything, I just felt like that was a perfect stopping point for book 3. Because once book 4 gets going, it does not stop. And so I had no choice but to leave it on somewhat of a cliffhanger, because it was the best spot to split the story. That's all there is to it.
Interesting, and it gave fans more of a reason to want to read book 4 ASAP to find out what happens next. And I know you did not do that intentionally. I feel like I ask this question every single time, but what was your favorite characters you were introduced in this book?
It's a toss-up between Moira and Marley, but I think the edge has to go to Marley, because I feel her connection and her her linking up with Max was a beautifully poignant moment for the two of them. They both were damaged and traumatized in different and unique ways, and they somehow bonded regardless of all their difficulties communicating with each other. And they made a pact at the end of, I think it was chapter 15, where they decided, yeah, I want to spend more time with you and develop this relationship deeper. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like it was at that moment, if you're not on board with Marley by then, you're just not on board with her as a character. Because I feel like that is such the most pivotal moment for her. And of course Moira, because she's just such an innocent being, and I do give her some more to work with in books 4 onward. But I just liked the idea of a pangolin, a young, preteen pangolin being such a dangerous animal, can literally wreck level buildings to the ground. It's just such an interesting dichotomy of concepts there,
I agree. Which was your favorite character to hate in book 3?
Oh, easy. Marley Tallbender's dad, Archbishop Tallbender. So easy to hate. And especially what he does at the end. So... I have gotten several readers, including my book cover artist, Relina, just telling me, I hate you for what you did with him. And I'm like, you're welcome. I did my job as a writer.
Is he by far your favorite character to hate of the series ever so far?
Well, currently?
Currently. Yeah,
I would say yes. That might change books 4, 5, and 6. There may be another one who can usurp him, but he's pretty awful of a villain, for sure.
Now interest in book 2, and vaguely in book 1, is the Authority. Where did that inspiration come from?
Ooh, that is a very good question. I don't know if you've asked it before. The Authority came from... I honestly can't recall. I want to say it was either a movie or a show. I couldn't tell you which one it was. About some sort of dark force that the characters in the movie or show could not see, and that it was blinding... Oh, you know what? I think I know what it is. I just thought of it. I think Ghost, with Patrick Swayze. It was when the black beings are coming out of the ground and they're slowly coming for the people who have died, the villains, to drag them down to hell, and the lights would go out one by one down the street as they were approaching. That shit terrified me. It left a huge mark on my psyche, and I think that image was in mind, which is where the initial approach of the Authority happened in book 2. It's just the winking out of the lights, and then I decided to add more to it, word into where you get the deep guttural gasping, like it's struggling for air, and then just the overbearing sense of just absolute horror and terror as the person who's being targeted is just screaming for their life and trying to harm themselves, to kill themselves before it reaches them. I just added so much more terror on top of what was already fantastic and built him into something that's truly eldritch in nature. And now that I've come to a point in book 5 to where I fully fleshed out what the Authority is, it's worse than anything you can imagine.
Oh no. I know many of us are looking forward to find out what the Authority actually is, or what it will develop into anyway.
Well, there is more Authority in book 4, a lot more than there was in 3. It seems to be a pattern. Book 1 had very minimal Authority influence, book 2 had a lot. Book 3 had very minimal Authority influence, book 4 will have a lot. I don't know how it's gonna be for books 5 and 6, but we'll see if the pattern continues.
Book 6? It's nothing but the Authority.
Well, it has to be. I mean, that seems to be the overarching crisis, the biggest threat that's looming over everybody, so I have to deal with it at some point as a writer, right?
Yep, or just leave it somewhere in the background as a loose thread to be tackled at a later time. I know you got started as a fanfiction writer, and the Legend of Ahya series actually started from another series you wrote, or novel at least, called In Darkness I Hide. Where can people find that book?
You actually cannot find the book for sale anywhere because it can't be sold. It is a fanfiction, of course. It can be found on Wattpad, fanfiction.net, an archive of our own. And if you look it up, In Darkness I Hide, under the Zootopia fandom, you will find it. Under my online persona, Darkflame Wolf. That one was centered around Marana Wolford, the mother of Taylor. This was before Taylor was ever a thing. This was before I even came up with the idea to strike out on my own to make my own original IP. And so I was trying to write my own original character into the world of Zootopia and have her be the focal point of that fan fiction. It was so interesting to have everyone else, the characters that people love from Zootopia, be the side characters, the supporting cast to the main draw, which was Marana. But then when it came time to come up with a mother for Taylor, I couldn't really think of a good enough mother for this fantastically unique wolf with a tail maw. I couldn't come up with someone new, someone that could even be regarded in the same, high esteem as what Taylor will become by the end of book 6. So I'm just like, she needs an equally powerful character as a mother to fill that role. And in the end, I had to be like, I have to use Marana. I have to divorce Marana from her original fanfiction roots and make her part of my own original IP, because she is my character. She is my own original creation, so she can be moved from franchise to franchise. She can become her own thing, which she does in this series. And that was the decision I had to make. I had to pretty much retroactively make that fanfic a crossover, an AAU crossover. It wasn't an AAU crossover in the beginning, but the moment book 1 dropped, Target of Interest, it became a crossover fanfic.
Right. I know in starting book 3, you managed to secure an artist to do the maps. Have you secured a new artist for book 4?
No, I am still working with the same team as before. Julius Billiter is still my map maker ever since book 1. Rulina is always my cover artist. And Cam 1, not Kame, not you, Cam 1 is my interior illustrator. Every single one of them is just continuing to get better, book by book. Like, I dare say, this is all of them. This is some of their best work since books 3, 2, 1. They just knock it out of the park every single entry. And I am very thankful to have found them, and they're willing to be part of this journey with me.
That's so nice. Speaking of finding artists for your series, for any inspiring writers out there who want to have artwork included in their books, how would you suggest they go around trying to find these artists?
Well, there's a variety of ways you can. I'm just going to detail the way I found them. I started looking through art communities. I started looking through DeviantArt, although this was before the whole AI thing. It was actually a viable site to look for actual artists. And then I was looking through for Affinity. I was looking through, because obviously this is a fur-centric novel, so I looked at those spaces. I looked at those artistic spaces where I know that people who would be drawing would be very comfortable in drawing characters such as Taylor, Ari, Marley, Max, Stephen, all those. So it wouldn't make no sense for me to look in the human artist spaces where they excel at drawing humans, because then I would be forcing them out of their comfort zone as artists. So my first tip would be, look at artists you want in the spaces that you want the art to be. So if it's all humans, then you look at those artists. If you want it to be furry related, then you look for those artists. And then when I found Cam, by pure accident, I saw a couple dark, disturbing, horrific images, like in the realm of scary stories to tell in the dark. Those types of images. I remember reading those books when I was younger, and they also terrified me. I guess that's why there's a lot of horror elements in my stories, because I grew up on them. But I was gravitated to his art, and I just reached out to him, just sent him a note saying, hey, I'm writing a book series, I'm looking for an interior illustrator. And sure enough, he was available, and he signed on for the full 6 books. So it never hurts to ask. So if you find someone who you like is within the price range you can afford, then shoot them a message, tell them everything. Just be upfront what you're going to be expecting and what you're planning to do, and let them see if they want to hop on board your project.
Great advice. Now for book 4 details. I know you said we're going to be talking more about the elder races in book 4. Any characters you can drop a hint about?
Yeah, there's actually going to be several new characters, one of which is the matriarch. She is the leader of the elder races, and she has a part to play in book 4, and I've actually really loved the way I described her. I wrote her as a character. I find her fantastic. But I think the standout star of book 4 is someone you briefly met at the end of book 3, which is Kanya. She is a Draconid, which is currently right now the only surviving link to the fact that dragons were possibly a thing in this world. Like, she was you could say, the botched product between a dragon and another type of mammal, bird, or reptile. That whole process gets explained later in book 4. But she is something that shouldn't exist, but does because of a mistake. And she is a character. She is a firecracker, and she provides so much more levity to scenes. I adore her. She is a fantastic character. She is the eternal type of character, the one that lasts so long. They have a long life compared to anybody else in the cast. Because they have such a long life, that comes with its own existential issues, and it's just great to be exploring that sort of drama with a character that no other character in the series can tackle with.
Interesting. I know the book title for book 4, spoiler alert, is Broken Empires. How does that tie in to the wider world of Legend of Ahya?
Broken Empires was something I came up with after I had finished about 3/4 of the book. There's all these empires that are place at the start of the series. We're talking about Mammal High Council, the Lavarnu Empire, the Alpakar Empire, and then in books 3 and 4 we got introduced to the birds and their little, I wouldn't say democracy, but I guess republic or something of clans and families. So we have all these empires, and they're each like falling one by one. And so book 4 is kind of like an end of an era. It's the transition, like from Lord of the Rings, from the 3rd era to the 4th. There's a changing of guard, and as all these institutions that have been in place for thousands of years are now falling apart. They're becoming broken. They've been broken for centuries. It's just now that they're reaching their breaking point. And so to me, as I was 3/4 through the book, I was like, this seems like the best way to describe everything that's happening. Everything is broken and everything is falling apart. Everything that they have built up for so long is being undone because of Taylor, prophecy, interference with script, everything. It all ties together. It's all connected. And we're going to learn of those connections in books 5 and 6.
Interesting. I know that Varnu has been introduced and talked about since book 1, but we don't want to get in too much depth on it. Well, we get more information on it in book 4.
Yes, in fact, half the book takes place in that country and in the capital of Ningfan. You will be getting so much Lavarnu in book 4, you won't know what to do with yourself.
In case you're wondering, Lavarnu is where the character Natalia, the snow leopard, is originally from. I know in book 3 it was revealed that Taylor has some pups now still inside of her. How will that interfere or progress the story going forward?
Yes, she has 4 pups in her belly right now at the end of book 3. Well, in terms of the overall plot of book 4, it's not going to impact too much. However, because of her pregnant condition and how far along she's going to be by the end of it, there are certain things that she will be unable to do, which means that she'll be relying on others for assistance. And then obviously, because of the changing of the guard, if you will, of empires and the whole story and everything, she's going to give birth to these pups. I wanted to explore the realm of parenthood with her. I've always thought it was great to have characters who marry, who get kids and stuff, but usually the story ends there. Usually the story ends with a happy ever after, with either, they just get married and they're in love and the future's looking bright, but then the story ends. We have no idea how it actually turned out. Or they get kids and they get birth to beautiful baby children, but then the story ends and then we never know how it actually turns out.
Mm-hmm.
So books 5 and 6 were a fantastic way of going past that trope of ending a story when the happily ever after happens and pushing forward to see how does it actually impact the characters, their lives, the people around them, and what will it mean for the story? Because now then you get into certain issues and stuff like parental fear. That's a terrifying trope if you know it. That might come into play at some point in books 5 and 6. That fear that the kids are missing, where they go, I don't know where they are, maybe they've been kidnapped, stuff like that. Like, it's just, I want Taylor to go through the stages of being a parent when they're, cubs, toddlers, little tweens. I want to showcase a character a female character in motherhood stage, because I just feel like you don't see enough of that in literature. And I felt this was a perfect opportunity to showcase a mother learning how to be a mom.
I know in 9% of the cases of single parents later on, it's typically the single father or the mother-like figure, but never directly the mother herself. Almost never anyway.
That is correct. And there may be a point in books 5 and 6 where she does have to possibly take care of those children on her own. I have not fully fleshed out the entire scope of 5 and 6, all the details and stuff, just the major events. But there may be a time where she has to deal with things on her own. And it's a struggle that I am excited to bring to the page, because you just don't see that very often. And I want to shed more light onto the problems that parents have.
Especially in such a unique case like Taylor with the tail moth being Ahya. I know a character introduced in Book 2, Samantha Cummings, the Red Panda, has had some significant growth from Book 2 to Book 3. What can you tell us about her in Book 4?
I'm not spoiling anything, because for those who've read Book 3, you know where we last left her. And it wasn't really in a good spot. All I can say is that Samantha exists. She's there in Book 4, and she has things that happen with her, and she has a role to play in the story. Outside of that, I can't really say much more about Samantha, except that you're going to see more of her in Book 4.
I know she has her fans out there.
Yeah, which was actually very surprising. I was not expecting a lot of people to gravitate towards Samantha. I know that she didn't have too many fans at the end of Book 2, because she was kind of a character that was antagonistic to Jake in terms of how she treated him and how she regarded rabbits as, pretty much intimate slaves, if you will. So I don't think she garnered a lot of fans there, but I think it was Book 3, which was the turning point when I fleshed her out, where she started to see it Taylor's way, and she started wanting to help Taylor and Jake seek a better life, and then of course, became the servant to Taylor, and they got to know her better. I think it was at Book 3 where readers started to gravitate towards her as a character. So it's not the first time this has happened. I mean, Natalia was not intended to be a huge character until readers, were drawn to her and then indicated how much they loved her as a character. I'm like, okay, I guess I better write some more of her into the books. So,
how would you describe Book 4's story arc?
How would I describe the story arc? I'd like to describe the story arc as a story set in 3 pieces. We have Taylor and her group with the Elder Races starting off. We have Max and Akinar on the search for Marley. And then we have Steven with Mikhail and the birds and stuff. So we have 3 different sets of characters who each have their own objectives and motivations. And they're all kind of converging in 2 main places, Al-Talkar in the south and the capital of Ningfan, the country of Lavarnu. And the way the book is structured is very, I don't want to say convoluted, but in such a way where it's out of order. And I did that purposely. Wanted to throw readers into the deep end and let them figure it out as they go. There's so much happening across all these groups, all pretty much at the same time, where I actually had to do timestamps for the first time in the series. And, day 1 of this, day 3 of this. There's 2 different date milestones that we're working with here. There's this new holiday of Hallows Dawn. So we're tracking time by the holiday in Ningfan, Hallows Dawn, and then we're tracking time in the south of the new reign of Duke Yolmer. So yeah, spoilers, he did survive the end of Book 3. You didn't think he would go away, but he did. So we're tracking time based on those 2 pivotal milestones in both the north and the south. And so as we kind of jump around for pacing reasons between each of these groups, there's a stamp in each one, so you can in your mind mentally check off, okay, this is before that scene, this is after this scene, this is occurring at the same time as that scene. And so it's like you have to piece together the puzzle of the story before everything comes together, and it will. It was kind of like Book 2 where everything started to align towards the end of the book. So it's very convoluted at the start, but then as we go along, everything is pushing toward a singular storyline, and everything comes together at the end. It was very hard to plan, it was very hard to pull off, and it was only for the grace of my beta readers that they helped me put it in a proper order.
Interesting. And I'm looking forward to reading this and finding out where everything goes from here.
Well, the trick to writing a plot that jumps around both in time and in groups of characters is to have everything continue to move forward. Even if you skip back a couple days when you go from group to group, their story should continue to always press forward. So that way there's at least some linear progression happening on each of the lines of plot. So that way it's easier for the reader to continue to pick up where they left off whenever you come back to a specific group of characters.
Fascinating. And finally, any final words you would like to say to the audience?
Yes, don't write yourself into a corner. I will admit, and I already said such, if for anybody who buys book 4, I admit in the author notes in the back, for anybody who's read the previous books, I have my own personal thoughts and comments on the book that you just read. Well, in book 4, I freely admit that I wrote myself into a corner at the end of book 3. I was trying to figure out how to connect all these groups, all these characters, all these plot arcs together so it became as one full story arc at the end of the book 4. It took double the amount of words, pages, chapters. This is the longest book by far, chapter 30, to write myself out of that corner. That's not that you can't write yourself out of a corner, it just might take longer, it might be more painful as you try and figure it out, but in the end, I'm still happy with the end result, and I'm very proud of the book that I have pulled out of the rubble of what I left behind in book 3.
If you're looking forward to more Legend of Ahya, I'll put a link to the playlist for everything of Legend of Ahya, from reviews to interviews, in the comments below. And if you like what you saw and want to see more of my content in general, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell for notifications when my next video airs. Leave a like, maybe a comment, share it with friends, family, other furry friends you might know, and I hope to see you all next time. Johnny!
Johnny!